Hello and welcome to another episode of All Opinions Welcome. Joining me today in the studio is Emily Hewertson. Now, you are something of an internet sensation.
Wow, I guess you could say that.
You leapt to the nation's conscience during a certain episode of Question Time. So why don't we start with a quick look at that clip now.
To be honest, I can't believe we're still having this debate. At this point in time, I think the only things left in Europe should be Liverpool and Tottenham. And I think, Anna, if you would like another referendum, why can't we use the EU elections as another referendum? And when the Brexit Party do well, which I hope they do, and that's coming from a Conservative Party member. I've been a member of the Conservative Party since I was 16. I'm now 19. I've canvassed for them, but the party has let us down. And I will be voting for the Brexit Party during the European elections. And that seems to me a democratic way of having a second referendum, which would be undemocratic.
I know you're putting this to Anna, but Amber, I just want to hear what...
So, it's fair to say things kicked off, didn't they?
Yes, I didn't even realise that people sort of went on Question Time and then their social media blew up. I was never expecting to go on there and get a platform. I literally wanted to go on there, say my point, and show that not all young people are these lefty loonies that want to remain in the EU, and I want to show that, you know, Brexiteers do have a young face as well.
But the whole point of this debate is that right from the very start, it's been framed as gammon. You know, middle-aged, elderly, dying, or even deceased Brexiteers who ruin the future for young people. Like,
Absolutely.
You're not saying that, are you?
Absolutely not. I think one of the problems with the EU is it's painted out to be this big beacon of freedom, you know, freedom of movement, freedom of goods. But to me, it's a con. That isn't real freedom. For me, the real freedom comes from having control over our own borders, having control over our fishing waters. So to me, I interpret freedom differently to a lot of other young people. And I think as a young person, with social media being such a big thing, it's so easy to jump on the bandwagon and kind of join that vibe, and it could be a very scary place when you have a different opinion to most other young people.
That's it, and it's fair to say that during that episode, you know, Nigel joked that you may not be a Conservative Party member by the time you got home, but you are still
I still am. Yeah, I was a bit concerned, but then Brandon Lewis followed me on Twitter, who was the chairman at the time, a few days later, so I thought I was okay. But yeah, I think if the Conservative Party went along the line of expelling all people that said that they voted for the Brexit Party, they wouldn't have many members left.
So you voted for the Brexit Party in the European elections.
Absolutely.
How's Boris tickling you, so to speak? I mean, is he bringing the Tories back in? Is he making all the right noises? And do you trust him?
I think I do trust Boris. I think one of the big problems with Theresa May was that her heart was never in it. Yeah. She was never passionate about Brexit. She was a Remainer, and she also tried to pander to the Remainers too much. I mean, with that ridiculous withdrawal agreement. With Boris, the problem is that he did say that he would look at the withdrawal agreement without the backstop. Yeah. But I think the withdrawal agreement goes far beyond that in terms of being problematic. However, with Boris, he definitely has the passion for Brexit, and I think he really is trying to do everything in his power to make sure we leave on October the 31st. Yeah,
but the trouble we've got there is that the people in that place right behind you, they don't want us to leave. Now, it doesn't matter if Boris, you know, is saying I'd rather die in a ditch. What if they won't let him do his job? Is Parliament broken?
It is so frustrating. I mean, we talk about a representative democracy, but, you know, Parliament aren't representing the people. At the moment, it's the will of the House of Commons over the will of the people, and that's a very, very scary thought. I think going forward, we do need a general election, because I think the arguments about people changing their mind will all be redundant, and we need that pro-Brexit majority.
So talking about getting more young people involved,
yes.
I mean, the common argument is that Brexiteers are all dying by the day. If we had a second referendum now, the young people coming through would all vote Remain. In your experience, how true is that? How true is it that all young people would vote Remain?
Well, I think in the first time round, I think it was about 70% of young people voted to remain. However, I don't think that means that a young person's voice that wants to leave shouldn't be included within the argument. I think their point is just as valid as a young person that wants to remain. The problem is that if you say, oh, there's a 16 to 18-year-olds that haven't had the vote. Whenever you have the vote, there's always going to be 16 to 18-year-olds that haven't had the vote. And I think it's a bit of a morbid statement, but But Remainers always give the argument that old people are going to die, it's not their future. But for all we know, a young Remainer could die tomorrow. That's not really a valid argument, I don't feel.
But we also know, don't we, and you can shed some light on this from your Conservative background, people tend to get more Conservative as they get older anyway, so it's a complete myth to assume that people stay liberal all their lives.
Exactly. A lot of the people that voted to leave this time round in the 1975 referendum actually voted to remain. It's the same generation. I think minds do change. And if we look at that generation, they've seen it from both sides. A lot of them know what it was like before and how it is after, and they've actually been able to make the comparison. So there's always going to be people that want to remain. And it's also frustrating because a lot of these elderly people that want to leave have done amazing things for this country. I mean, some of them would have been in the war. So the idea that their vote isn't as valued as a young person is absolutely shocking.
Well, I was always brought up to respect my elders, and in fact, a big reason why I got involved in politics, having never done it in my life before, was that both of my parents who voted to leave said to me, independently of each other, they didn't think Brexit was going to happen before they died. Now, I had to go for a walk in the garden, if you know what I mean. That really, really choked me. I hear that all the time. This feeling that we are betraying a generation. I've been disgusted by how old people have been demonised, they're selling out our country for the young, but you're not saying that's the case, because young people have got an appetite for this as well.
Absolutely, and I think if you look across the EU, that pattern is replicated. If you look at places like Greece, there's such a high youth unemployment because of the euro. I think it's very easy to say all young people want to remain, but I don't think that is the case. I mean, if you go speak to a Greek young person, I don't think they'll be very happy to be in the EU.
Well, that's exactly right to say. I mean, I do a lot of work on male suicide reduction and men's mental health, and there's been a direct impact on the lives of young people in those countries that have been hammered by EU austerity, and I don't suppose those people are going to be friends of the European Union. But the big question is, how do we convert? How do you make Brexit? How do you make that anti-establishment sense? Because I think that the Remain establishment should now be, if you like, this metaphorical beast that we fight. How do we mobilise young people into standing up against this lot?
It's interesting, actually. I went to look at some of the protests against Stop the Coup, etc. And I was actually struck by how little young people actually were involved in that. I think young people are democratic and they do believe in democracy. However, I think we need to change the perception of what a Brexiteer is. So with people like me and a lot of my peers who believe in Brexit, showing that you can and you shouldn't be scared of the backlash, I think that will really encourage other young people, because there is the massive argument that all Brexiteers are old white men, and that is absolutely categorically untrue.
And it's fair to say that you don't lack the guts to go and confront the crowds, do you? Because over at College Green the other week, I was in there, I walked in, I was called a fascist, I was called a Nazi, I was told my children should be ashamed of me and all of this stuff, and I fronted them out. And then I met you later on, didn't I?
Yeah, it's
and
funny,
you went
actually.
back, but you did it even more so.
Yeah, I definitely had to have my say. So I'd had little nibbles all day of protesters walking past me and them shouting, like, "Save our democracy," which is the most ironic statement of the entire century. So, you know, maybe one gin and tonic later, I decided, only one, don't worry. Drink responsibly.
You went back over there?
So I headed over, and it was just so frustrating to hear the line, "Save our democracy." That was the thing that was winding me up most. So I decided to take it upon myself to, in return, shout, "Leave means leave." So it was all right, you know. But then one girl came up to me and said, "Oh, you're the girl off Twitter that in their bio has champagne and conservatism," which actually in my bio it's politics and Prosecco, but besides the point. Anyway, and then she started screaming at me, "Tories are murderers, Tories are murderers." So I think that's another problem. I think a lot of people assume that Brexiteers are right-wing, and absolutely that is not the case. I mean, Brexit won because of the big working class Leave vote, and that's something Labour has seemed to forget, and I think they'll suffer from that in the next election.
I mean, you're dead right. I mean, I get called right-wing all the time, which kind of makes me laugh on one hand, because, like, I voted Labour in my entire life until I got involved in the Brexit movement. I'm from Nottinghamshire, which has been red forever. I suspect it won't be if we have another election, but you are right that it's no longer red and blue, it's leave and remain. So we talked a bit there about the hostility. What else have you had in terms of the trolling?
Yeah.
And does that bother you, or does it galvanise you?
I'm absolutely one of these people that doesn't care what people think. I'd much rather stand up for what I believe in, and if that gets a backlash, then I'm fine with that. At least I'm being honest. I've had a lot of young people message me saying that they were too scared to admit that they were a Brexiteer, or
That's
admit
terrible.
that it is absolutely. It is such a scary thought that people are being held back because they're scared of the online abuse they'll receive from other young people and also older people. I've had a lot of people call me racist, which is just so frustrating because being a Brexiteer does not equate to racism. I mean, a lot of Brexiteers don't see immigration as a problem. It's the lack of the control that we have over immigration, and I think that's an important distinction to make. But I do get a lot of abuse, a lot of people commenting on my looks, saying that they don't take me seriously because of the way I look. And I think that's a joke, because just because I, like a night out, or I like to do my hair nice or whatever, that shouldn't make my opinion redundant.
It's interesting that, because, on the one hand, we're continually told that women can be whatever they want to be.
Exactly. It's the most liberal people. They always have liberal in their bio, yet they're not tolerant of my opinion, and then make insulting comments about the way I look.
And where do you think that liberal intolerance comes from? Are they born intolerant, or are they taught to be intolerant?
I do think one of the big problems is the social media. It's so much easier to jump on the bandwagon. I mean, there was a Guardian poll that said a third of young people voted in the referendum the way that they did from what they had seen on social media. So it does show that there is a massive influence from there, and I think it's very easy when you're behind a screen to... I think social media has massively changed the debate in that way, actually, because if you're looking at a screen, you'd say a lot worse things than you would in person. So I think people are a lot nastier, and a lot of times you meet someone in person, they have the complete opposite view to you, but you can actually have that civilised discussion without being called a racist, without being called a murderer, or whatever else I get thrown at me, or without being accused that I have plastic surgery. I have not had plastic surgery.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think it is that your looks? Because let's face it, you don't look like your normal political activist, which, by the way, is a compliment. And the point is, why is it that the way you look is, if you like, being weaponised against you? Are they trying to sort of delegitimise your voice because, hey, you're a bimbo, or what are they saying?
Of course, a lot of people do look at me and they think I'm a bimbo. They're really surprised when I start, getting into the political debate. But it's weird because I think a lot of Brexiteers have used me as a platform to show, and rightly so, that not all young people, and I don't fit the stereotype, and I like that. But that's also been used against me because I think young people have seen, wow, there's actually a young person that's got a bit of a platform that believes in Brexit. We need to attack her in some way, and maybe my looks is the easiest thing to attack, but I feel that if you attack someone's appearance, then you've lost the argument, as Margaret Thatcher said.
So would you say that Thatcher is your kind of political role model?
I do think she was great. I think I'm a bit more liberal than her, but absolutely, I think she gave such a good image for women in politics, whereas Theresa May's kind of distorted that in many ways. The problem with Theresa May is she was I think she didn't do a lot of good imaging for the Conservative Party. She said that the naughtiest thing she's ever done is run through a field of wheat. That is just not... relatable to young people.
It's the least un-rock and roll thing ever, isn't it?
Exactly. And you have Jeremy Corbyn saying, oh, I can't even say the naughtiest thing I've ever done. That's going to be a lot more attractive to young people because they can relate to it.
So, is it true that you would like to move into politics? You'd like to be a member of Parliament? And that plays over there. Is this true?
Well... at the moment, I'm very much of the opinion that I just want to say how I feel and stand up for what I believe in. If that eventually leads into a career into politics, then that's great. But I very much live every moment of the day and see what happens in the future. But as I was saying, I think the most important thing for me right now is just to stand up for what I believe in and stand up against that place. Because it's disruptive.
You have been a political campaign, like you go out canvassing, you do all that kind of legwork, don't you, for the Conservative Party?
Well, I did, and then the whole Brexit hoo-ha happened, and I actually went on a bit of a strike. I would like to be Prime Minister one day, I have to admit, but at the moment, it's just about sticking up for democracy and against the politicians that are really trying to overturn a democratic decision, which is so frustrating.
You see, there's one hindrance you might face, and that is you're about to start university, right?
I am, yes.
And you're going, is it to King's?
Yeah, to King's. So
Which I've heard is the most liberal lefty campus in all of Christendom. So how is a Brexiteer going in going to come out the other end not having been processed into a Corbyn finishing machine?
I think that is the problem. It is easy to kind of listen to the left propaganda, but I'm very strong in my values, and I can't see a time where I'd ever be anti-Brexit, because by being anti-Brexit, you are being anti-democracy. So I think my Brexit stance will definitely stay, and I can't see how my Conservative values would be lost.
So do you think on university campuses, I mean, I've been contacted a lot during this process by students who would like to start a Brexit group, but are a bit scared of doing that. Is that the way that we can get younger people involved on campuses, or would it get squashed by the lecturers, by the professors, and most importantly, by the students who don't agree with it?
I think it is definitely scary going to a university with lots of young people who are inevitably very liberal, and coming out that you're a Conservative and a Brexiteer. I think that's almost a double whammy. But I think it's just important to stand up for what you believe in, and I think these kind of groups are helpful, because a lot of people feel isolated when they have views that are different to the rest of their uni course, etc. So I think to kind of have a place of a sort of union where these people can gather and share their opinions, where they feel safe and they won't be attacked. I mean, it's like safety in numbers, really. It's a lot harder to go on your own, but if you've got others to support you, I think it's interesting. But I find it frustrating, because I feel a lot of left people aren't willing to engage in debates and just automatically write you off as being a bad person without actually listening to your arguments. So I think debate should be encouraged.
You're not afraid of debating. In fact, I hear you've locked horns with a certain Femi.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I wasn't told who I'd be debating. He walked through the room, and you know what? We disagree massively on Brexit.
Yeah.
We're at complete opposite ends. He is a Remainer, I'm a Leaver. There's a lot of disagreement there, but we actually came out and we said, you know what, we'd have another drink together, and I think that's important. I think that should be a good role model. I had a lot of people tweeting when they found out that I'd met Femi that they've unfollowed me and things like that, but I think that should be discouraged, because I think it's so important to show that you can have completely opposite political opinions but still get on.
Well, the funny thing is, over at College Green, I've had quite a few conversations with, with Stop Brexit, Steve,
Got
and
that
actually
ticking in my head.
And I said to him, look, I disagree with everything you stand for, but do you know what? You've got passion.
Yeah.
And I've said the same thing to Femi. And do you know what? They're confused. They're like, oh, this person's not a racist, xenophobic, whatever it is.
No, exactly.
And I think you're dead right. What we need more of is getting outside the echo chamber, thinking outside the bubble, and trying to show that actually people can disagree and still be civil.
Absolutely. Like, whatever your opinion on Brexit is, the one thing that you can say is it's got people talking. It's got a lot of young people more interested in politics and getting involved, and that's definitely a positive. But it's just nice to see a shift into more civilised debate. You don't have to hate someone because they're a Remainer or vice versa.
Now, I read this article a couple of weeks ago, which struck me as ludicrous, but you can help me out on this. And that was people on their dating profiles now refuse to date people if they're Remainers or Leavers. Is that true? Is it destroying romance across the nation, Brexit, as well?
Yeah, I think that's always been a problem for Tories as well. I mean, you see a lot of Twitter bios that are like, never kiss a Tory. Ironic thing is, most of them definitely have kissed a Tory. But I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my dad, he's an avid Remainer. He went to a People's Vote march. We're on the complete opposite end of the Brexit spectrum, yet we get on absolutely fine. I mean, it doesn't affect our relationship, and I think the fact that Brexit is tearing families apart is a massive sign that people are taking this debate too far. Of course it's important, but it shouldn't be really affecting personal relationships. If so, I think you need to take a step back and actually look on from it and think it's probably not worth it.
Your dad's a Corbynista. That must make for an interesting Sunday lunch.
He's not actually a Corbynista. He's a lifelong Labour voter, but Corbyn has just taken it too far. So I think he's going to be a Lib Dem voter at the next election, if we ever have one.
You can still try and save him from that fate.
I'm trying.
I mean, come on, Emily. You've got to do your best to save him. Now, I want to quickly ask you about something that came out when you did a BBC interview about your involvement in Turning Point UK. They called you an influencer.
Yeah.
Now, in a nutshell, what is Turning Point UK?
So it is a right-wing student movement. It's similar to what we talked about before, and it's about pushing forward sort of right-wing ideas, things like free market, and having a place for all people that feel that they have conservative views, potentially Brexiteer or even liberal conservative views, sort of to unite in campuses all over the country.
And do you think it's going to catch on?
The problem with Turning, because I've actually left as an influencer, I think the problem with Turning Point is that it's got a lot of the association with the Turning Point USA. A lot of people, young people in the UK, have a negative perception of Turning Point USA because they just think it's like pro-Trump, pro-gun laws. And that really can't be related into terms of the UK, because conservatism in the US is a lot different to the conservatism in the UK. So for it to be successful, I think it's a very good idea on the basis, and the values are really good and things I completely subscribe to. But for it to be successful, I think it needs to be completely rebranded as sort of a UK exclusive thing and drop the affiliation, because I think that's what puts off a lot of young people from joining.
Maybe if there were to be that kind of movement, you could be its queen.
Maybe,
maybe.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well,
definitely. Look, I do think there needs a counter for our future, our choice, because I think that dominates a lot of the young people sort of Brexit debate. When there are young people that are strong Brexiteers and do want to leave on October the 31st, and that's something that needs to be pushed.
Well, Emily, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And it's so nice to hear a young, fresh, passionate Brexiteer to give all of us hope that Brexit isn't going to die out when all the old gammon die. So thank
Absolutely
you very much.
not.
Good. Now, thank you. Over to you guys. Get involved online, comment, share, get involved, share this out there. This is the brilliant programme. All opinions welcome. Over to you.